Fellow brewers, thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be going over how I make a yeast starter. So the concept behind a starter is that you want to pitch a nice, viable, healthy population of yeast. And traditionally there's not enough viable yeast cells in one of these yeast vials or a smack pack to properly ferment out a beer. Don't get me wrong, you can definitely get away with it, but if you want consistent results, it's always great to make a starter. So you're going to need some yeast, of course. You're going to need some malt extract. At least that's what I use. And you're going to need some kind of fermentation vessel. And I use this 1 gallon jug. And that's got some star sand in it. But, you know, you can just shake it up. This has been sitting here for like 30 minutes. Star sand only needs a couple minutes of contact time, maybe even like 30 seconds. But I like to err on the side of caution. It's been sitting there for about 30 minutes. I walk by and I shake it up. And that's nice and sanitized now. So let's get boiling, add our malt extract, we'll go over some ratios. Okay, for this 1050 beer, I'm going to make roughly a half-gallon starter, and if you go to Jamil's website, he'll give you a good ratio of how big of a starter you need to properly ferment out a 1050 beer. So I'm doing roughly half-gallon. I don't think he requires that much, but I'm going to do a half-gallon anyways. Now, in John Palmer's book, he talks about making a 1040 starter, which is roughly a half cup of malt extract per pint. So we've got roughly 4 pints in here. We're going to use 2 cups of malt extract, actually just a little under 2 cups. That's going to make a 1040 starter, just under a half gallon. Stuff is messy as can be. Let's get this all mixed up. Where's my whisk? Get this all mixed up here. Turn our heat on. So as with a normal batch of beer, you gotta watch out for boilovers, so keep an eye on that starter. We just passed our boilover point. This is just water, like to spray the foam. It keeps the foam down. Turn this down a little bit. Now we're gonna boil for 5 to 10 minutes. I'll probably do about 10 minutes before we move into our sanitized fermenter there. Okay, so our timer just went off. We've got our sanitized yeast starter fermenter here, star sand in here. One last swirl. We're going to dump this in the sink. I put this over here, nice and sterilized. Put that right there. You'll see what's going on here. And then here's our starter liquid. We're going to dump it in our 1 gallon jug very carefully. Going to flame this again. We're going to put this in the sink and cool it off. Now I just poured boiling wort into that glass jug, and now I'm slowly cooling down that glass jug with warm water in this pot. I do not recommend you submerge your jug into ice cold water. You're probably going to shatter the jug. So this is going to take maybe 10 minutes to cool this down, and then we're going to pitch our yeast. So now that our wort is cool, we can pitch our yeast. This is the time to be very sanitary. One thing I like to do is kind of pre-open this, because the yeast sticks at the bottom of these vials. You really got to shake it up, and then if you open it immediately, it'll kind of blow up on you. So just make sure that you can open it all the way without it blowing up. And I can. So I'm going to flame the opening to this because there could be some yeast that hits the rim of this. Flame the top of this. Set that right there. Open our yeast. Flame it again, just in case. Flame the top of this, and then I spray with star sand. There you have it. Our yeast is in there. Get it all mixed up. Nice and sanitary. So this starter is going to take about 5 to 7 days before it's ready to pitch into your beer. And what it's going to look like is you're going to have a nice, off-white layer of yeast at the bottom, and then this wort, or I guess it's going to be beer at that point, is going to be a little bit lighter in color, and it's going to be clear. And at that point I know that I can pitch it into my beer. Now before I pitch this into my beer, I like to decant probably 90% of this wort off the top of the yeast cake at the bottom. And then what I'll do is I'll swirl it up like this, swirl that yeast up, and then dump it in my beer. I don't like to pitch starter liquid into my beer, just the yeast. So there you have it. That's how I make a starter. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Hope this helps. Cheers, guys.